Brands like people carry memory. They live in the quiet trust of routine, the familiar squeeze of a tube each morning, the promise of cleanliness, safety, order. But sometimes, a brand forgets who it is. And when that happens, confusion enters the market like a bad taste that doesn't wash away. Picture a freezer aisle, frosted glass, harsh lights. And there, stamped in confident red and white, a name meant for mouths, not meals. When trust is stretched too far, does it grow stronger, or does it break? In the late 1970s, Colgate-Palmolive was not just a toothpaste company. It was a global consumer goods empire, operating in over 160 countries, generating billions in annual revenue, and embedded in the daily rituals of hundreds of millions of households. Its logo sat quietly in bathrooms across the world, associated with hygiene, health, and trust. But beneath this clean, disciplined identity was a corporate ambition shared by many conglomerates of the era: expansion without limits. The logic was simple. If consumers trusted the name, they would trust it anywhere. New aisles meant new growth. New products meant new profit streams. This was the age of brand leverage, when companies believed reputation itself was a transferable asset. Soap today, food tomorrow, confidence as currency. And so Colgate stepped beyond the sink and into the freezer. What followed was not a production failure, nor a supply chain disaster, but something far more revealing: a lesson in how power, psychology, and identity collide when corporations misunderstand the systems that made them successful in the first place. To understand how Colgate ended up in the frozen food aisle, we need to rewind to the architecture of post-war capitalism, a time when size itself was strategy. The mid-20th century rewarded scale. Conglomerates flourished by spreading risk across categories, geographies, and consumer needs. The belief was structural. Diversification meant resilience. If one market slowed, another would compensate. Growth was not optional, it was defensive. Colgate-Palmolive had already mastered this logic. By the 1960s and 70s, it wasn't just toothpaste. It was soaps, detergents, pet food, household cleaners, products united by one invisible thread: daily necessity. These were repeat purchase items, embedded in habit, protected by routine. Inside boardrooms, this created a powerful illusion. If habit could be manufactured once, it could be manufactured again. Frozen food, especially ready-made meals, was exploding in the United States. Rising dual-income households, less time to cook, supermarkets expanding freezer space. Convenience was becoming a currency, and beef lasagna, warm, filling, familiar, fit perfectly into that trend. On paper, the move looked rational. Distribution networks already existed, retail relationships were strong, marketing budgets were deep. The only missing ingredient was belief that a brand built on cleanliness could suddenly stand for taste. The seed was planted quietly. No grand announcement, no warning signs. Just an invisible assumption forming that trust is universal, not contextual. And assumptions in business are often the most expensive assets of all. The launch itself was unceremonious, and that was part of the problem. Colgate's frozen beef lasagna arrived in supermarkets during the late 1970s, sharing shelf space with brands whose entire identities were built around flavor, comfort, and indulgence. Names that evoked kitchens, families, warmth. Colgate's name evoked something else entirely: mint, foam, sterility. At first, executives watched the numbers. Distribution was secured. Shelf placement was achieved. Marketing followed the familiar corporate playbook. From a logistical standpoint, the rollout worked. From a psychological one, it collapsed. Consumers didn't complain about price. They didn't complain about quality. They simply didn't buy. Sales underperformed almost immediately. Focus groups revealed an instinctive resistance, not rational, not analytical, but visceral. People couldn't reconcile the idea of eating a product branded by a company synonymous with toothpaste. The mental image alone was enough to shut down appetite. This was not a market failure. It was a cognitive failure. By the late 1970s, marketing theory was shifting. Scholars and strategists were beginning to understand that brands don't live in factories or boardrooms, they live in the mind. And in the mind, categories matter, associations matter, context matters. Colgate's move exposed a quiet power shift. Not toward consumers with more choice, but toward consumers with stronger psychological boundaries. What once worked in an era of limited options now failed in an age of identity-driven consumption. The market had changed. The rules had changed. And Colgate learned, publicly and painfully, that dominance in one system does not guarantee permission in another. The product was pulled. No scandal, no lawsuits, just silence. But the lesson echoed far beyond the freezer aisle. What made Colgate's frozen lasagna failure so instructive wasn't the loss, it was the miscalculation. The company assumed that brand equity was a single, transferable reserve. But in reality, brand equity is segmented, layered, and fragile. It operates like a mental map, not a bank account. Colgate's true profit engine had never been its name alone. It was category dominance, controlling a narrow psychological space so completely that alternatives felt risky. In oral care, Colgate didn't just sell toothpaste, it sold safety, dentists, white coats, clinical language, reassurance. That same mechanism became a silent lever against it. The more powerful Colgate's hygiene identity became, the less flexible it was. Every minty association, every promise of cleanliness, every foamy visual reinforced a boundary. This brand belongs in the bathroom. Crossing that boundary triggered discomfort, not curiosity. This is the hidden cost of brand strength. When identity hardens, expansion becomes expensive. Other conglomerates learned to separate brands, acquiring food companies but leaving names untouched. Colgate learned the opposite lesson. Integration without separation invites rejection. The invisible margin wasn't in manufacturing or logistics. It was in perception. And perception, once broken, is harder to refreeze than any lasagna. For consumers, the rejection was immediate and unspoken. No petitions, no outrage, just a quiet decision made in supermarket aisles across America. Because consumption is not logical, it's intimate. Every purchase carries trust. A frozen meal enters the body. A toothpaste touches the mouth. Mixing those roles felt like a violation of an unwritten contract. And that contract had been built slowly, over generations of advertising, habits, and morning routines. Inside Colgate, the impact was more subtle. Not a financial collapse, but a strategic recalibration. Teams learned that efficiency does not equal permission. That scale does not equal intimacy. That growth without meaning creates friction. For workers, marketers, and executives alike, the episode became a reference point, a story retold in business schools, brand meetings, and marketing textbooks. A reminder that systems shape behavior, not intentions. No villains, no fools, just a system revealing its limits. Because wealth, reputation, and dominance are not just accumulated, they are interpreted. And interpretation belongs to people, not balance sheets. Colgate's frozen beef lasagna was never really about food. It was about boundaries. A global corporation mistook familiarity for flexibility, scale for permission, and trust for universality. And in doing so, it revealed something essential about modern capitalism. Power travels only where identity allows it to go. The brand survived, the toothpaste still sells. But the lesson remains frozen in time, a quiet warning etched into marketing history. Because every system has edges. Every name has meaning, and every expansion tests not just markets, but memory. So the next time a brand stretches into unfamiliar territory, ask yourself, is this innovation or is it dilution? If this story reshaped how you see brands, power, and trust, share your thoughts below. Like the video, subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics of business history. Because these stories don't end. They evolve every time we choose what to trust.